Yeah, I think really what I'm after overall, and it is a transition, and probably American youth ministry, and I'm sure it's found its way onto the shores of Australia in certain ways, and really what I'm trying to stand against is this idea that youth ministry is simple or that it's easy. And we've heard this from an older generation of youth workers that have basically said, this isn't complicated. It's just about loving God and loving kids. That's all really youth ministry is about. And my real push is actually to go in the exact opposite direction and to say, this is really complicated. This is really complicated stuff. You are dealing with human beings. Granted, they might be 15, but even at 15, they're intrinsically complicated. That they exist in multiple spheres with families and societies and school systems and things like that make this complicated. This is fundamentally complicated, maybe in a beautiful way, but complicated in its beauty, that we have a God that we confess who's found on a cross, crucified, overcoming death with life. That youth ministry is intrinsically complicated, I think. And I think people in my country have done a disservice to global youth ministry by continuing to say, oh, it's simple, just love kids and love God, as if that's a basic generic reality. And so I think really what my work is after, which maybe is a pseudo advertisement for staying away from it in some ways, but is trying to complicate this thing. Trying to make it more complicated. Again, not esoterically complicated that you don't know what's going on, but complicated in the sense of reminding us that we're dealing with human beings and cosmic divine realities that encounter finite people. This is complicated. And so I think there's a beauty in that. And so I think the thing I would want to say to youth workers across the globe is that you are involved in something beautiful and beautifully complicated, and it takes courage. It takes eyes to see, and I think it is a wonderful blessing and calling to be part of, but it isn't simple, and it will never be simple. And I don't think we want it to be simple, because we want it to mean something and to matter. And so I think overall, that's in my work what I'm driving for is not to make it esoteric, but to remind us that it's complicated. When a kid has to wait for their dad to pick them up, and when he gets a once a month meeting with them, it's complicated. When a kid goes to a classroom and is having trouble reading and fears that people are going to know, it's complicated. When a kid asks, why would God do this? Well, how can God love me if my brother has cerebral palsy? It's complicated. These are complicated realities. Or when a kid just simply says, I don't understand anything in the Bible, and how can the Bible be the Word of God if it contradicts itself at places? This is complicated. So I think there's beauty in the complication, and that we should embrace that. And I think we should feel honored to be part of this vocation because it's complicated. And then we need to take the courage to lean in to the complication and to demand that God encounter us, seek for God up against the complication.